Lena stepped off the train with a small brown suitcase in one hand and hope in her heart. The station was loud and full of strangers, but she walked slowly, almost carefully, like someone who was afraid to break something precious. She had never been this far from her village before. The cold air touched her cheeks, and the sound of trains, whistles, and footsteps filled her ears. She looked around nervously, trying to find the man she had been writing letters to for months. Back home, Lena had grown up in a quiet village surrounded by fields and dirt roads. She was always shy and gentle, never the loudest voice in the room. She helped her family with cooking, sewing, and taking care of the younger children. She never thought of herself as beautiful or special, but when a distant relative told her about a man in another country who was looking for a wife, something inside her whispered, "Maybe this is your chance." For months they exchanged letters. His words were warm and full of promises. He said he wanted a kind, simple woman. Lena thought maybe he would like her for who she was. She practiced writing neat sentences in his language, memorized the way his name looked on paper, and dreamed of a new beginning. The day his letter arrived inviting her to come, she packed her few clothes, a family photo, and a small scarf her mother had given her. With a brave but trembling heart, she boarded the train that would change her life. The moment she stepped onto the platform, she saw him. He was taller than she had imagined, wearing a dark coat and holding a bouquet of flowers. Her heart jumped. She smiled shyly, lowered her head, and walked toward him. Her hands were shaking, but she whispered a soft hello. But something changed in his eyes almost immediately. He looked at her, then looked again, as if comparing the real Lena to a picture in his mind. She was wearing a simple dress. Her hair was tied back neatly. She was quiet, standing with her head slightly lowered. She didn't rush to hug him or speak many words. She thought being respectful and shy was a good thing. But he frowned. "You're quiet," he said slowly. Lena nodded gently, not sure what to say. She tried to speak a few words in his language, telling him she was happy to see him. But her voice was soft, almost like a whisper. Around them, people walked by. Trains came and went, and the world moved quickly. He, however, grew more impatient with every passing second. This man, whom Lena had trusted with her dreams, had imagined something else. He had pictured a woman who would talk a lot, smile widely, make him feel proud in front of others. He wanted someone who would shine like a bright light. Lena was not like that. She was soft and quiet, like a candlelight in the corner of a room. He sighed, looked away for a moment, and then shook his head. "This isn't going to work," he muttered under his breath. Lena didn't understand every word, but she understood enough. Her chest felt tight. She tried again to speak, to say something to make him stay, but he turned his back. "You're too shy, too quiet," he said, his voice cold. And just like that, the man who had written her sweet words in letters walked away, leaving her standing alone on the platform with her small suitcase. For a long moment, Lena didn't move. She stood frozen, her heart beating so loudly she could almost hear it in her ears. The wind blew through her hair, and the crowd around her blurred like a moving painting. She didn't know where to go. She didn't have friends here. She didn't know the language well. She didn't even know which street led to the city center. Her fingers tightened around the handle of her suitcase. She slowly walked to a bench and sat down, her body shaking not from the cold but from fear. She remembered her mother's last words before she left. "Be brave, my child. Good things happen to good hearts." But sitting there, she wondered if good things were really waiting for her. She tried to stay calm, but the reality started to hit her. She had no home here. No one was waiting for her. The man who was supposed to marry her had rejected her in front of strangers. She felt small in a country so big. The sun slowly began to set, painting the sky with soft orange colors. People hurried home. Some met their loved ones with hugs and smiles. Others walked fast, focused on their lives. But Lena remained on that bench like a forgotten story. She thought about returning to the train, but she didn't even have enough money for the ticket back. She thought about asking someone for help, but her words were limited and broken. She was too shy to speak to strangers. Then a light rain started to fall. Tiny drops touched her hands and face. She didn't move. Her eyes stared at the tracks, watching the trains pass like scenes from someone else's life. Inside, she was remembering the nights she had spent imagining a different future. She had imagined walking beside her husband through the city, learning a new language together, building a small home, maybe raising children one day. But all of that vanished in seconds when he turned away. People passed by her without noticing. A woman in a red coat walked quickly. A group of students laughed loudly as they crossed the platform, and an old man with a newspaper sat on the other end of the bench. Life moved on, but Lena felt stuck in that one heartbreaking moment. She opened her suitcase and touched the scarf her mother had given her. It still smelled faintly of home. She pressed it to her chest and closed her eyes. She wanted to cry, but she didn't want anyone to see her tears, so she sat there quietly, just as she always did. As the night grew darker, the lights of the station turned brighter. The platform became quieter. Only a few people remained waiting for late trains. Lena hugged her suitcase close, unsure what to do next. She thought about how everything had happened so fast. One morning she was in her small village, full of hope, and now she was alone in a foreign land with no plan. But even in her fear, she did not blame anyone. Not herself. Not her family. Not even the man who had left. She just felt empty, like a page with no words. She remembered how excited she had been the day she got his letter saying, "I will be waiting for you at the station." She had repeated those words in her head during the entire train ride. She had imagined his warm smile, a gentle welcome, maybe even flowers. And yes, he did bring flowers. But now those flowers lay forgotten on the ground near the tracks. Lena leaned her head against the cold wall behind the bench. The train station was no longer a place of dreams. It felt like a place where her future had been broken before it even began. But she didn't give up hope completely. Deep inside, there was a small voice telling her, "This is not the end of your story." She didn't know that just a few meters away, someone else was watching her. A man with kind eyes who had arrived to catch his train had noticed the young woman sitting alone in the cold. He didn't know her story yet. He only saw a quiet girl with a lost expression and a small suitcase. But for now, Lena sat alone, unaware that her life was about to change again in a way she never expected. The clock at the station ticked softly in the background. The trains came and went, and Lena, still shy, still quiet, waited, not for the man who had left, but for something she couldn't yet imagine. She held the scarf tightly. She whispered a small prayer in her language. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew she had survived the hardest day of her life so far, and sometimes that was enough to keep going. Lena sat on the cold bench as the night grew deeper. The station lights glowed softly and the air felt cooler than before. Most people had already gone home and only a few travelers waited quietly. She hugged her small suitcase close to her chest as if it were the only thing she had left in the world. Her eyes followed the trains that passed by. Each train carried people who had a place to go, someone waiting for them. But she had no one waiting. She was a stranger in a foreign land with nowhere to sleep and no clear idea what to do next. At the other end of the platform, a man named Samuel leaned against a post waiting for a late train. He had come to the station after visiting a friend. He was tired, but calm. As he watched the platform, his eyes fell on a young woman sitting alone. She looked small and fragile in the large, noisy place. Her hair was tied back, her clothes were simple, and her suitcase was pressed against her chest. There was something about the way she sat there, quiet, still, lost, that made his heart pause for a moment. Samuel was not a man who usually interfered in other people's lives, but that night something in Lena's eyes touched him. He could tell she was scared and didn't know what to do. He thought for a few minutes, then walked slowly toward her, careful not to startle her. "Miss Mai, are you okay?" he asked gently. Lena lifted her head. She didn't fully understand every word he said, but she recognized the kindness in his voice. She shook her head slightly. Her lips trembled and her eyes looked down again. She didn't know how to explain everything. Samuel noticed her accent when she softly said a few words. She spoke slowly, trying to explain, "No, nowhere, to go." Those few words were enough. He understood. She had been left alone. He sat down on the bench, leaving a respectful space between them. "It's very cold tonight," he said softly, as if talking to a frightened bird. "Do you have someone to call? A place to stay?" Lena shook her head again. She opened her suitcase and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was the letter the man who rejected her had sent. Samuel looked at it. He couldn't read everything clearly, but he understood it was supposed to be a promise. His chest felt heavy as he realized someone had abandoned her. He took a deep breath. He didn't want to make her uncomfortable, but he also couldn't walk away and leave her there in the cold. "I live not far from here," he said slowly, choosing each word carefully so she could understand. "It's safe, warm. You can rest. I can help you find help tomorrow." Lena hesitated. She looked at him. She had learned to be careful, but his eyes were kind, not pushing, not demanding, just offering. Her heart was scared but also tired. She whispered a small, "Okay." Samuel stood up and gently picked up her suitcase. He walked a few steps ahead, always making sure she felt safe. Lena followed, keeping a little distance but feeling a strange sense of relief. They walked through quiet streets. The city looked different at night. Soft lights from windows, the sound of distant cars, the smell of rain on the pavement. Lena had never seen anything like it. She held her scarf close to her neck. Samuel's house was a small, warm place with yellow light coming from the window. When they entered, the air smelled faintly of bread and coffee. It was simple but comforting. Samuel gave her a blanket and a warm cup of tea. "You can rest here," he said softly. "You're safe." Lena sat on the edge of a chair, unsure what to do. She didn't trust easily, but there was no fear inside her, only tiredness. She took a sip of the tea. It warmed her from the inside. For the first time since she arrived, her hand stopped shaking. Samuel went to the spare room and brought her a pillow and a clean blanket. "You can sleep here tonight," he said. "Tomorrow, we will talk. I'll help." Lena whispered a quiet, "Thank you." She lay down on the small bed. The softness of the pillow felt like a kind hand on her tired heart. She closed her eyes, and for the first time since arriving, she felt she could breathe. The next morning, sunlight touched her face. She opened her eyes and saw Samuel sitting at the kitchen table reading a newspaper. There was bread and warm porridge on the table. The smell made her stomach growl softly. Samuel looked up and smiled gently. "Good morning," he said. She smiled shyly back. It was a small smile, but it was real. He gave her breakfast and asked simple questions. Slowly, patiently, she tried to answer with her broken words and gestures. Bit by bit, Samuel understood her story, the letters, the promise, the train station, and the moment when everything fell apart. Samuel's heart ached for her. He had lost someone years ago and lived alone, but he had always believed in kindness. "You are not alone," he told her. "I will help you." Lena lowered her head, tears forming in her eyes. Not the same tears she had cried at the station, but softer ones. These were tears of being seen, of being treated like a human being again. Days turned into weeks. Samuel helped Lena with small things, teaching her words in his language, showing her the neighborhood, introducing her to kind people. Lena slowly began to speak more. Her voice was still soft, but it was no longer hidden. She started to smile more often. She learned to take the bus, to buy small things from the market, and to cook meals in Samuel's kitchen. Samuel liked watching her quietly hum to herself while stirring a pot or folding laundry. There was a peacefulness in her presence that filled the quiet spaces of his house. One day as they walked near the park, Lena saw a little girl playing with her father. She watched them with a gentle smile, and Samuel noticed the light in her eyes. Something inside him felt warm. They began to spend more time together, not out of obligation, but because it felt right. Samuel told her stories about his childhood, and she told him slowly about her village and her family. They were two people from different worlds, but their hearts understood each other without needing many words. Lena never forgot what had happened at the train station. It hurt, but that pain slowly turned into something else, a reminder of how far she had come. She no longer felt like a rejected girl. She felt like someone with a future. One evening, as rain tapped gently on the windows, Samuel and Lena sat at the kitchen table sharing a quiet meal. The room felt warm. Lena looked at him, and in her eyes there was gratitude, trust, and something deeper. Samuel reached for her hand. Not fast, not forcing, just gently. She didn't pull away. Instead, she placed her hand over his. Neither of them spoke for a long time. They didn't need to. The silence was soft, full of understanding. In time, their bond grew stronger. People in the neighborhood began to notice how they looked at each other, how naturally they fit together. No one saw Lena as the shy girl at the station anymore. She was a kind woman with a quiet strength. Samuel loved her for the very thing that had once been seen as a flaw, her gentle, quiet nature. To him, her silence was not empty. It was warm, steady, and safe. Years later, Lena often told the story to her children. She would sit with them near the fireplace, holding her scarf, the same one she had held on that cold night. She told them about the train station, the rejection, the rain, and the man with kind eyes who saw her when no one else did. She never spoke of the pain with bitterness. She spoke of it like someone who had walked through darkness and found light on the other side. Samuel, sitting beside her, would listen quietly, sometimes holding her hand as she spoke. Their children would listen with wide eyes, amazed at how one night at a station changed everything. Lena would smile softly and say, "Sometimes life does not give us what we expect. It gives us what we truly need." The shy girl who was once left behind had found not only a home, but a family. Her story was no longer about rejection. It was about hope, kindness, and the way unexpected hearts can meet when the world feels cold. And so, the night that once broke her heart became the beginning of a life she never imagined.